Okay. What did he say?
Great to see everybody here. Why don't we all stand and say our defining statement? Kiwanis is a global organization of volunteers dedicated to improving the world, one child and one community at a time. Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have a song, Clay?
We certainly do. I'm heading west to the Wild West area in a couple of months, so to get me in the mood, I thought we would sing in your book on page 37, top of the page, Home on the Range. So we'll start at Home on the Range. Yeah, wait a minute, let's start from the beginning. It starts, oh, give me a home. All right, we'll start again, great group. Oh, give me a home
where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play. Where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are cloudy all day. Home, home on the range, the deer and the antelope play. Seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day.
What a great group. Thank you.
Thank you, Clay. Everybody can have a seat, and we'll have our invocation from Charlie Sawyer, our member.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to gather together today as fellow Kiwanians to enjoy wonderful food and treasured friendships. As we enjoy these gifts, help us to always remember that we are here to serve others less fortunate rather than to be served ourselves. Help us enjoy the beauties of spring, but also keep our focus on helping those in our community who need our assistance. In your name we pray. Amen.
I will recognize our guests now. We have David Clark, who Sanford Bailey has brought, and possibly a prospective member. We're excited about that. We have his application. Wonderful. We're glad to have you. You're going to be a part of us. We're looking forward to it. And then we have Hannon Holliday. Am I saying that right? Charlie Sawyer, thank you.
And we're happy to have her visit with us today.
Yay, thank you. And we have a former member here, Jeff Ellington, is joining us. There he is.
Yeah, it's great to be back here today. I am really enjoying my lunch today with Clay and Nick, and seeing Courtney, and I had tried to get Jim Walbrink to come over, but he wasn't feeling quite up to it today. But I'm on the way to Ocean Isle Beach to see my 5th grandchild, who I've not seen yet. So, and it's also my birthday, so I'm
Happy birthday.
having a good day.
With that, I'll get into some of our members' birthdays. We have Gary Pendleton, who has a birthday on the 8th, Howard Taylor, a birthday on the same day, Brody Burwell with a birthday on the 11th, and Robbie Wooten with a birthday on the 14th. So we're glad you all are getting older and looking younger. Membership welfare, we wanted to share with you that Jefferson Griffin, I don't know if you were someone that read this, but I saw this as others did, and he had a daughter, and she was only, I think, about 3 days old, and she passed away. So think about him and keep him in your prayers. And then Tarver, his illness is deteriorating, I think, a little bit faster than was anticipated. And we want to keep him in our thoughts and prayers. And also, it's been brought to my attention that he would love to have texts and emails, not necessarily phone calls, but he would prefer text and emails. So keep him in your thoughts, and if you can send him a text or an email, certainly do. Announcements, Sandra Burkhead is going to make an announcement here.
Here you go, Sandra.
Hey. So March is Diaper Drive Month, so please think about that over the next couple of weeks. You can bring checks written out to the diaper train. Next week I'll have a little more information and hopefully a way for you to pay online to make contributions. You can also bring diapers and children's books, but they'd prefer cash, so they can buy more diapers with fewer dollars than we can. So please bring those. We'll be doing that throughout the month of March.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra. We have our speaker, and Hugh is going to introduce our speaker. We were sitting there having lunch with her, and it became quite evident to me that I think everybody's going to find this very, very fascinating.
Hey, everybody. All right, well, we do have a very special guest today, Sarah Koonts, a historian and state archivist who has been working in the State Archives office for more than 20 years. With over 190,000 cubic feet of public records, private manuscripts, organizational records, and even non-textual materials in their care, the Division of Archives and Records operates one of the largest and most comprehensive state archives in the country. She's from Lamar's, Iowa. That's the hometown of Bluebell ice cream. Blue Bunny ice cream. And she attended NC State, and that's what brought her to Raleigh, and she's lived here ever since. So as original as North Carolina is to our country, you can imagine how vast our archives go, and how fortunate we are to have someone with Sarah's experience in place to keep it safe. Today, her office is working on moving physical records to an online database that helps keep that information safe and makes it more searchable and accessible. So let's give a big Kiwanis welcome to Sarah Koonts. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do actually know the date today. This was my original speaking date before the snow, and I realized this morning I forgot to change the slide, so apologies for that. My presentation today, I like to feature records from our collections. I figure you don't want to look at me, you want to look at something really neat from our collections. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what we do and what we have, and hopefully we'll have time for lots of questions, and we'll have a lot of visual fun along the way. So this is actually an image from our private collection, the Jane Simpson McKimmon collection. You may recognize her name from NC State, and the County Extension Service and McKimmon Center is named for her. We have part of her collection are these great tomato booklets. There were tomato clubs in North Carolina starting in 1912, 1910 time period. And so these are all, it's like scrapbooks from girls that learned how to do canning and care for their tomatoes and selling their products and things like that. So that's what that is from. So what we're going to do today, I will talk a little bit about our history and mission and about our collections, give you an idea of the variety of our collections, and I'll tell you a little bit about our services in case you're not familiar with what we do, and then I'll end with a little bit about our records management piece, because my division is actually named the Division of Archives and Records. So archives, the easy way to think about that is the old stuff we're going to keep forever, and the record side are all of those folks that are dealing with current government officials at any level in North Carolina, advising them of how long to keep their records and when to send them to us, when they can throw them away, things like that. So that's the record side of the world. This is part of our World War I and World War II poster collection. So I am housed in the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and our former head of the department used to say that we're the Department of Fun and what everybody likes about North Carolina. And all joking aside, there's a lot of truth to that. We have everything from parks, museums, historic sites, the Symphony, Art Museum, archives, history, so all the arts, history and nature stuff that you can think of. And it's a nice place to work because people generally like what we do and they love what we have to offer to the state. So I'm not collecting your taxes or writing you a ticket or anything like that, and people are usually happy to see us when they come to one of our facilities. But we are all across the state, and you'll find our department's operations in just about every single county. So a little bit about the state archives and our origins. We're actually the original part of that agency. So it used to be long ago the Department of Archives and History. And we were founded in 1903, so we're the third oldest state archives in the country. Only Alabama and Mississippi have older formal institutions than North Carolina. And we are kind of unique. You heard a little bit at the beginning about how big our collections are. That's because we're pretty centralized. So in other states, like if you're going to Tennessee, a lot of those court records remain in the courthouse and you have to go courthouse to do research. We're pretty centralized in North Carolina, so people generally can come to us and we're pretty much a one-stop shop. And that makes our collections very large. We do have 2 satellite offices, which I will cover a little bit more about that later on, but they're in Manteo and in Asheville. And we also have quite an old records management program. We were also very early in this arena as well. So we've been doing records management for a long time, and it's integrated under my division, which is nice. So we can sort of take that long-term view and looking at agencies. And a good example would be we're looking for things that might be archival and of long-term historical significance that might be being created now in a government office. So as I said, we're the oldest part of the department, and it eventually made its way into cultural resources in the 70s, and then in just the last decade, we've turned into natural and cultural resources. And this is the Carolina Charter of 1663. So that is the first page of the Carolinas. There was only one Carolina, our birth certificate, and that's quite a beautiful document. If you're downtown, I think we're going to have it on display at the General Assembly building in the next couple weeks on a Wednesday for people to see. All right, this is a little bit about our mission, and that is one of my favorite documents. That's our original copy of the Bill of Rights. That is a whole other presentation of the story of the theft and recovery of the Bill of Rights, but that's our original manuscript copy that was in our state, stolen, and then recovered in 2003. But basically our mission is pretty straightforward. We're collecting the history and culture of our state. We're protecting citizen rights in saving those records. We're promoting government transparency through records management, and we're providing a variety of types of access, so you can come to us in person, you can look at things online, you can talk to us in email, and that helps with access. And then through our programming, we're trying to really engage people in a love of North Carolina's history. But more importantly, I like to feel like God called me to do what I'm doing. Many years ago, I came across this verse and I thought, this is perfect. This is exactly what we do. And this is a verse from Jeremiah. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel says: take these documents, both as sealed and unsealed copies of the deed of purchase, and put them in a clay jar so that they will last a long time. I thought, well, there you go. That's what we're doing. We don't use clay jars, but I thought, even in the Bible, they want you to keep your records for a really long time. And this is a good example of one of those really old records. This is a 1787 land grant from Rutherford County. It's actually got quite a beautiful map on there and compass rose. All right, a little bit about our collections. And I do like to think we did cash these in at the Bank of Good Fortune. We have a whole variety of collections in the archives, just a lot of different places that send us records. So the bulk of our materials are coming from government offices. So for example, from counties, we're collecting all the wills, the estates, tax records, court records, land records, things like that from counties that really protect information about your property and your rights and your identity, things like that. We have archival state agency records from way back to the founding of state offices. So for the Secretary of States, that's way back to the colonial time periods forward. We have quite a vast amount of records from the General Assembly and the Governor's Office. We have the early original Supreme Court cases in our collection. And then we're very fortunate that we are allowed by statute to collect private papers as well. So that's going to look like a lot of different things. Business records, organizational records, family papers, diaries. We collect a lot of military collections from veterans in North Carolina to document the history of our armed services, and that you don't have to be in a conflict for that. Things like that, maps, posters, pictures, all of those are things that we take in. And I'll go over a lot of those in more detail. This is an image of a church record that we have from Fayetteville from, I believe, 1864. And the interesting thing about this record is it lists the members and then enslaved members of the congregation as well. So that's kind of a great piece of information because it is putting people in a place and time. All right, county records, so many county records. And for those of you that don't know it, there are actually defunct counties in North Carolina that are no more. So if we find records from those places, we have those in our collection as well. And they just span a variety of different topics. I've pulled out a couple images here to kind of reflect some of the things that we have. So the smallest image is a 1788 petition of James Eliot to free his slave named Patience. So again, really good piece of information, especially if you're doing genealogy. Also another really good genealogical piece in the middle there, those are images of a type of record. A lot of our records have dated names. They're called alien registration records, but they're really naturalization records. So until 1941, when the Supreme Court said that was illegal, counties could actually hear immigration petitions. And so we do have this small clutch from counties of these records, and they're really a great snapshot of people coming to North Carolina at the time. They often have a picture, they talk about their relatives, they talk about people they know here, what's their profession, all this kind of stuff. So they're really, really great. Those are all online. And then the last document over there is a court record from 1889 in Wilkes County, and I only pull that one up because it's signed by a famous set of North Carolinians, Chang and Eng Bunker. Has anyone ever heard of them? The original Siamese twins. They actually moved to Wilkes County, married sisters, had a bunch of children between them, so they were quite a large landowner in Wilkes County at the time, and they retired there. State agency records also similarly will span a lot of different topics. So one that's series that I like are from the Secretary of State's office. They see the Jiffy Cake image. That is trademark registration. So if a company wanted to have a trademark in North Carolina, they'd send in a sample. So those are really great fun. Some of them are very colorful and pretty. And then a lot of them talk about kind of transactional business that might intersect with your family and its history. That small document in the middle with a hole is what you call a pay voucher. And that was the way the government paid people for things starting in the Revolutionary War. This is actually from 1812. But you might have done some service, given something to the state at the time, and that hole in the middle reflects that you were actually paid. But that, again, another great way to find out about somebody if you've got your name and where they're from and what they were being paid for. And then the document, the larger document, is Confederate veterans pension from 1901 in North Carolina. And those are coming out of the state auditor's office. So they were the ones that provided pensions for the veterans at that time. As I said, we also have a lot of General Assembly records. I've pulled a few here that are serious, and then some are not so serious. The one that has the pink stamp on it, I like to use this one. This is what you call a bill jacket. So it surrounded a bill that was put in, was filed, and it was a bill to allow women's suffrage in North Carolina. So this is the first time that a suffrage bill was proposed in 1897. And it might be a little bit hard to see, but that red stamp is what they used when they were sending it to a committee. So it says, like, past first reading and the date, and then it says in the committee, and then you'd fill it in. So then they would say, where is this going? So what's filled in is the Committee on the Insane Asylum. So I guess that's their way of saying, yeah, we're not even going to listen to this bill. But we think that's a kind of a cute editorial by the General Assembly at the time. The middle document, and I apologize, that's kind of hard to read, is actually quite a long document. That is a petition. So petitions are a great source of information because the General Assembly has always been a very powerful, and at that time, the most powerful branch of government. And they had the right to do things like if you wanted to get a divorce in early North Carolina, you had to petition the General Assembly. So there were a lot of things that you wouldn't think of nowadays that they had say-so over. And so petitions are really a great source of information. Some of them are serious, some of them are not. This one we like a lot. This is from the Richmond-Anson County area, and it's actually some citizens petitioning to complain about their own elected official. This is a very long document, and they go into great detail about how much they hate him and how bad he is. To be fair, this guy is kind of notorious anyway, but at the very beginning of it, they talk about him and they say that he acts funny at certain times of the month based on a bite that he had recently with a mad wolf. So when we first were reading this, we thought, are they saying he's a werewolf? And so we kind of informally refer to it as the werewolf petition. Not sure what they thought the General Assembly was going to do, but it's quite a colorful petition. I think at one point they say in there, we hope he goes to Raleigh and dies. And I thought, well, this is pretty harsh. But that's the kind of things you'll find in the General Assembly petitions. And then the last one, again, I apologize that that's kind of hard to read, but it's a very, very large document as well. And that is an 1843 petition and a syllabary from some Cherokee residents of Western North Carolina who did not leave during the Trail of Tears. And there was an effort at that time in 1843 to try to complete the removal of the Cherokee, and they are petitioning the General Assembly, and it's this long, drawn-out narrative where they're saying, like, look, we've been here, we've been good citizens, we're part of the community, that kind of thing. But the syllabary itself is pretty unique because it's got Chinese words, not Chinese, Cherokee words at the bottom. So that's a great document as well. Lots and lots from the governor's office. Primarily, you're going to see a lot of correspondence, a lot of letters in and out of the governor's office. Those can take different forms. This Western Union telegram is from, let's see, let me look at my date, 1962, to Governor Sanford from Martin Luther King. So stuff like that, you'll see famous people in there writing the governor, you'll see everyday citizens writing the governor. The document on the other part of the screen is the rough estimate of the expenses to build Tryon Palace in North Carolina. So this is from Governor Tryon's time period, and this is quite an expensive building. So if you hear in your history or you read about people revolting in what's now central North Carolina, but it was western at the time, over the cost of the expense of Tryon Palace, you can take a look at this document, and that was a very, very expensive building to build, and that's in our governor's papers, colonial governor's papers. And then we also have more modern correspondence. This is a series that I like to pull out for school kids. This is from Governor Moore in 1968, and this is in the days following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. And typically, if someone would write the governor's office, you might have the original letter, and then you'd have a yellow kind of carbon copy of what the governor wrote to the person. So this is actually a series of correspondence from a group of school kids in Wilkes County. And they were African-American students, and they were complaining to the governor about what they thought about the state of race relations in North Carolina in 1968. So there's their original letter there in the file, and then there's a copy of his response on the yellow piece of paper. But then what the students do is they take his original letter, which is the image on the side there, and they're kind of like write a response, like a rebuttal on there, right on top of his letter, and they mailed it back to him. So we have their response back. So it's kind of an interesting back and forth that we might not have had if they had not sent that back to us. So that's kind of an example of modern records. A lot of historic court records, most of those in the counties, but as I said, we have some early Supreme Court cases as well. These are very interesting ones to me. The map that's up there is a map from the famous Tom Dooley case. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. He was a Confederate soldier who, after the war, was accused of killing Laura Foster. And this is the map that was used in his trial. Now, this is turns into a folk song in the 60s. And actually, it was a song before that, but it was recorded in the 60s. And hang your head down, Tom Dooley. And that's the map from that original court case. It's quite large. We've actually had a teacher here in Wake County that uses that map in her high school class to talk about like forensics. How do we reconstruct what was happening when by using that map? And then I like this other case here. You can't really read it clearly, but it's from around 1911, I believe. Let me look at my notes. I don't think I wrote down what date it's from, but it's from the early 1900s, really critical case. I know all of the lawyers in the room are familiar with this. It's State v. Linklaw. So this comes out of Robeson County, and Mr. Linklaw was accused and convicted of disturbing the peace for singing too badly in church, loudly and lustily. So future Governor Russell was the judge at the time. He appeals his case up to the Supreme Court. They did vacate it, so he did not have to pay the penny fine that he was charged for disturbing the peace. But apparently, records of the time reflect that during the trial, they had people imitating him as on the witness stand, and that caused quite a lot of ruckus in the court. So there's some things that aren't quite so serious, but I do like that case. I took this out for a school group recently, and I had some 8th graders there, and one student said, well, was he really disturbing the peace, or did he just feel the spirit? And I said, I don't know. That's what you have to decide if you're on the jury. All right, so we also have a lot of private collections, and these are just varied and vast, and I could have done a whole presentation just on private collections and donations from people and families across the state. They vary from the one image that looks like a series of pictures. That's a letter from a student at Black Mountain College. She's writing home to her parents, and she thought it'd be funny to write this like pictographic letter where it's like little antlers for dear mom and dad. And then she's doing all this stuff. It's quite a long letter, but you can kind of have to translate it to read what she's saying. So that's kind of fun. And then in the middle 2 images, we have this great collection in our private collections called the Suffrage Anti-Suffrage Collection. And it's really a compilation of a lot of propaganda on both sides of that topic. And it's neat. There's a lot of ads and other pieces that people were using to kind of make their case. And so you might have cartoons and things like that. So the man washing dishes, that's on the anti-suffrage side. And I want to vote, but my wife won't let me. And then the piece in the middle there is a fan, and it's using Revolutionary War imagery, and they're dressed up supposedly like, the early statehood, and the woman saying, I want to speak for myself at the polls. So we have a lot of that kind of back and forth, and it makes a great collection, especially to use with kids so that they can kind of look at political cartoons and propaganda and interpret it for themselves. And then the image of the long letter with the hand is an example of a type of correspondence that we would get in. This is from a series of letters called the Poteet-Dixon letters, and they're from McDowell County, and it's a lot of correspondence. It's quite voluminous between a husband and a wife from McDowell County. He was off in the Civil War. She was home alone with 5 kids running the farm. Neither one of them were happy at the time. So they're writing back and forth. And in this letter here, she actually tells him not to vote for Governor Vance, which I find funny. Next to the suffrage pieces, she's telling him how to vote. But they write back and forth, and it's really reflective of the fact that war is hard on everybody, and it's quite poignant. And in this particular letter, she enclosed a tracing of a hand, and she said, your daughter was born, please name her. So this was their 5th or 6th child, and she's asking for him to name the child. So that's examples of the sorts of private materials that people donate to us. We also have a lot of audiovisual collections, and they come from all over. Newspaper archives, state agency record collections, and other things like that. So the image of the little girl washing her hands is from actually a series that we got from the Duplin County Schools from the 1949 to 1950 time period. So that's a great little image there. And in the middle one is a chemistry class from Black Mountain College. And then the top one, this is one of my favorite images. I discovered this one day when I was looking through the News and Observer archives, which I was looking for a particular image, and I see on an index card that this was a series of photographs called Thad Ure and His Mule Wearing Hats. And I was like, well, I have got to see that. If those of you may recall that Thad Ure was the long-running Secretary of State in North Carolina for many, many, many years, but I thought, I've got to see this. So I just think that's funny. I don't know why the News Observer took a picture of him and his mule wearing a hat, but it's great stuff. And as I was sharing at lunch today, one of the things that's interesting about our audiovisual collection is they get to see a really wide variety of researchers. It's not just people coming in wanting an image of a relative or something like that. Oftentimes we'll get asked, oh, I'm decorating a new restaurant, I need some historic barbecue pictures. Or I'm decorating a hotel, what do you have of landscapes or things? Or people writing books or doing documentaries on a particular topic. So they really get a variety of requests from our photographs. Similarly, we have lots and lots of maps. If you like historic county maps, we have digitized our county maps in conjunction with Chapel Hill. You can find those online, including the one at the top there. But they really span a variety of different topics. So the one with the grid and all the writing on it, that's actually the original 1792 survey of Raleigh. So that's the original survey map that shows and reflects the 4 squares and Union Square in the middle where the Capitol is, names all the streets, and names the boundaries, which are north, south, east, west. So that's a really great little map. And it's actually not very big. It's only about this big in real life. The top map is from 1754, and that's in our collection at the Outer Banks History Center, and it's part of our kind of great collection of early maps that aren't always accurate. I believe they call the Cape Fear River the Rio Grande on this map, but they're very pretty, hand-colored colored map. And then that last one is from 2008, and that was someone doing an overlay of a digital map, a current map on a historic map to try to kind of show change over time. So that's often what maps are used for now, to take something and mark it, and then you can lay a GIS layer over the top. We also have a lot of posters from a variety of places. You saw in the beginning of early slides, we have a lot of World War I and World War II posters. This is another World War I, The Women Awake, Your Country Needs You. We also have some hand-drawn original recruiting posters from World War I that were drawn for a specific recruiting office in North Carolina. And then in World War II, our agency was very active in trying to collect home front information. So we have a whole series of scrapbooks and now these posters that kids actually made to kind of support the war effort. And this is one I like, where he was drawing Uncle Sam Needs You. And it's kind of like getting in the spirit. We've got a great scrapbook that I often use from Scotland County of a school where they were demonstrating how they were supporting the war effort through scrap drives and conserving rubber and saving their fats and growing victory gardens and things like that. So those are really great reflections of the home front during the war. And as I mentioned, we collect a lot of military records. That can be photographs, letters, materials from your time. Like sometimes we'll have menus from a Thanksgiving Day dinner or things like that from our veterans in North Carolina. Some of them are kind of fun. The one that says Some Party there, we have a whole series from Edward McNeil. He was on a ship in World War I, and he took all these pictures of their goat that was a mascot on the ship, and fellow sailors and places where he went. We particularly like to use this image on Valentine's Day of these 2 sailors, including him, kissing 2 girls. And then on the back of that actual image is a little inscription that says, "Everybody says we don't look experienced because you're looking at the camera. Vi." We don't know who Vi is, but she left that little inscription on the back from when they met. And then we do have a lot of poignant things in our military collections as well. This is the letter with the image of the gentleman there, and the letter in blue is Butch Strickland, and he was a soldier in Vietnam, and this is a letter home where he is foretelling that he will pass. And indeed, shortly after that, he was killed in Vietnam, and his parents donated his collection to the state archives. So a little bit about what we do. Well, our search room has changed from that image. That's from the 40s. But we have in-person research here in Raleigh. We're at 109 East Jones Street. Our Western Regional Archives is in Asheville. They're real close to the VA Center off of Riceville Road. And then in Manio, we are at the Outer Banks History Center, which is co-located with Roanoke Island Festival Park, if you've ever been out there. We do allow remote reference questions anytime. That's probably the fastest way to check in with us before you come in. If you, hey, do you have this collection, or do you have that? Or, just make sure we've got something, or just ask a question if you don't have time to come in, and we'll see if we can answer it for you. And then a lot of what we're doing, our services with reference, is we're maintaining that custody of public records. This might surprise you, but I get asked a lot to certify records for court or for another reason. Basically what I'm saying is, this is an official record that we got on a transfer from a county office, so it's been in public custody the entire time. So we do that a lot. We need people that need, I serve as the registrar for any defunct school, post-secondary school in North Carolina, so that if a school goes under, they would transfer their admission records to us for transcripts, and I sign off on transcripts all the time, people needing those for future schooling and things like that. And then, people often need research for things like military veterans. They want to burial rights of a veteran, we often were searching for records for that, or military service verification, things like that, or they need a copy of marriage, divorce, or sort of vital records type thing. So we do a lot of that as well. If you're looking at our digital collections, this is what the home page looks like, or the top part of the home page. Our digital collections, we do that in conjunction with the state library because they're a sister part of our agency, and they have a lot of records or publications that relate to our original records. And so our kind of philosophy is people just want to find the records. They don't really care if it's on the shelf of the state library or here, they just want to see them. But they're kind of organized by topic. You can search across all of the collections, but if you know, for example, you want a naturalization record from that alien registration and naturalization collection, you can go straight to that and just browse that collection as well. But they're kind of generally organized by topic. And you can get to that straight from that web address or from our main homepage. And then that is not to be confused with our online catalog. So when you think about an online catalog, don't think about a lot of images or things like that. Think about like what you would have used with a card catalog or the information about collections. So here's where you go to hear a lot about what's our span of holdings and how many boxes do we have, or a collection description. We like to do in my field what we call finding aids, and finding aids are things where we're providing a lot of background information. So for example, with the Poteet-Dixon letters, we would have a little bit about the collection and what's its date span and who's doing the writing, and a little bit about the husband and the wife and the topics covered. So that would be information you'd find in a finding aid. And that'll be in our online Discover Online catalog. When you're there, you can search across all of our repositories, or you can isolate and say, okay, I just want to know what's at the Western Regional Archives or what's at the Outer Banks History Center. We do have robust social media. We like to push out things, fun things in our social media accounts. So we have a Facebook page, we have several Instagram pages. In fact, our audiovisual Instagram page is quite popular. We have a YouTube channel where you can watch just videos about resources about archives, as well as we record all of our programs, and they'll be up there for you to watch as well. And then a lot of our archivists, rather than do a lot of intense cataloging, they'll put samples of images up in Flickr, in albums there. So Flickr's a good place to go if you want to say, oh, I'd like to see old images of the Capitol or something like that. They put them in albums. I just was looking at our monthly reports, and our military archivist just scanned a selection from a military history collection that she brought, and she scanned 56 photos. So that'll be in an album on Flickr too, for easy access. And then we do have a podcast, if you like podcasts. It's called Connecting the Docs. And in there, we're trying to link stories to our records. This image on the side here is an example of the types of things we like to do on social media. This was something we did just very recently. We have a journal in our private collections of when Richard Caswell went up to Philadelphia for the Continental Congress. He was a delegate. And this is, his son kept the journal, so we were doing kind of like, where in the world is Richard Caswell? So where was he on the road? We've got an actual map where he was that day, and we have the excerpt from that diary talking about what he did on that particular day. Oh, I'm almost out of time. Real quick, records management, we've been doing that for a long time. Like I said, we consolidated our program. We use records retention schedules for all levels of government that talk about what kind of records they keep and outlines what to do with them at the end of their life cycle. We give them a lot of good best practices, really important now for digital records. Also now our big challenge is collecting modern records. So that image of Jim Hunt is the first web page of any governor that we have collected. And that's the first website that a governor had in North Carolina. And then we're also collecting social media. That's also the first image of the first state fair homepage that we have collected. And that was the end. So, sorry to rush that at the end.
I wanted to make sure we have enough time just to have a few questions, so.
Yeah.
Anybody will ask questions?
Right here.
In 2022, North Carolina's original copy of the Constitution was found in Edenton, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And it went up for sale, I think it sold for $9 million
Right.
a few months ago. Did the state try to acquire it like they acquired the Bill of Rights? And if they didn't, why didn't the state try to get that?
Well, I'll give you the short version. We did not. We have a copy of that exact printing of the Constitution. And when that came up for sale, the expert they were using from out of state who advised the auction house on some facts about that Constitution was misleading. So he said, like, this is one of 2 copies the state received. Not true. Like, we got a copy, we have our copy. So there were some things that were said about it that were not true. The printings of the Constitution are a very complex thing. They've made several different printings along the course of the Constitutional Convention, and there's not really a clear understanding of how many were made for certain printings, including that one, and where they all went, because there's evidence that people who were not in elected offices received copies. But we have an exact copy of that same printing. It was authentic. It was an authentic printing, correct. That it was his son's home, and could have been his, could have been other people. There were other members of the delegates to the Continental Congress that ended up in Edenton, so it could have been their copy as well.
A quick question on, do y'all have a room with things on walls, like a museum type presentations, all in a jar? Like
Yeah, no, we don't, because light is a real problem for archives. So like, if you come down the hallway to my office, we have a lot of what looks like original maps on the wall. Those are all copies. So we tend to just get things out for display for certain things. Like, I'll have the charter out at the General Assembly building for a day, and then we bring it back in. So we like to keep things not exposed under bright light all the time.
Well, similar to that, if we wanted to research something and we weren't really good at digging that up online, would we be able to make an appointment to come see somebody in your office to go do that physically?
Yes, and you don't need to make an appointment. We're open Tuesday through Saturday. Tuesday through Friday, it's 9 to 5, Saturday, 9 to 1, and you do not need an appointment. You can just come in. The web address that I had on there, you can also email ahead of time and ask a question to see if we've got a collection. A lot of people do that now to kind of narrow down their research. So yeah, you're welcome to, we love to have people come see us. You can also come take a tour if you'd like.
Okay, good.
There's been lots of newspapers over lots of years. Many have failed, many are
Right.
still failing. But what do you have about old newspapers?
So newspapers are really tricky because they do not age well. So typically, what has been the practice in my field is you image or microfilm the newspapers and don't save the originals. So we have a huge newspaper archive going way, way, way back. That has been digitized by newspapers.com, and now we partner with UNC Chapel Hill and the North Carolina digital collections. If we are going to image a newspaper, we're going to give it to them, and they do the cataloging and put them online. So yeah, we try to save newspapers. Online publishing of newspapers is a little trickier than saving those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Stay right here. Stay right here. I'm going to do something. That was excellent. And as always, we present a children's book to read and feed. It's an after-school program for kids. Looks like you know all about it. And what we would like for you to do is to sign it.
Okay.
And you can take this with you, and
Sure.
then I'll get it
Okay.
afterwards. Thank you again so much. And I want to thank all of our guests for coming. And where did it go? All of our guests, David Clark, Hannon Holliday, and Jeff Ellington, our former member. And I think that's where we are. Our next week's speaker is Liza Roberts, and she founded Walter Magazine. I'm sure you'll find that fascinating. So have a wonderful weekend, and I hope you've enjoyed today. Thank you all.